Hello, everyone. This is Marcy Leemore. I work at the UNC General Alumni Association, and today we have our career coach, Catherine Tuttle. As many of you know, Catherine has been providing career coaching sessions for our General Alumni Association members and also been doing wonderful webinars each month because there are often so many questions from alumni about should I use career coaching? Is career coaching for me? Should I join the Alumni Association in order to take advantage of career coaching? We decided it would be great to do a webinar available for all alumni that just sort of gives a little bit more overview of those times when career coaching might be helpful. So I am going to turn it over to Catherine, who's here, and I'll serve as her trusty assistant every now and then, maybe probing a few questions along the way. Catherine?
Perfect. Thanks, Marcy. I am so glad to be doing this. I think it's a great resource. It will be a great resource for people. I'm going to start out with the camera to say hello, put a face to a name, other than just a photo for those who have not worked with me. I thought it would be nice to kind of give a more personal touch, and we'll go into the traditional PowerPoint from there. But I have 10 years of experience working in higher education, both with MBA students at Duke University's Fuqua School of Business and with alumni of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and NC State University. So kind of everywhere from recent grad to more experienced. I really like to take an individualized approach to my work with alums. I want to meet you where you are. I want to understand what your needs are, what your goals are, and then from there help you create a plan to get there. So today we're going to talk through how we might go about doing that and some different topics that might be relevant to you and help you better kind of picture yourself using the career coaching resources that you have through the GAA. So I am going to switch to PowerPoint now. And start to kind of go through those examples. So oftentimes, alumni do call and they say, is career coaching for me? As Marcy said, should I use career coaching? What could I use career coaching for? And so that's really the purpose of today, because oftentimes alumni think of career coaching as a technical thing, right? So they call when they see a job they want to apply for and haven't updated their resume in a few years, or they get called to an interview and they want to prepare, or they're thinking about putting themselves out there from a job search perspective and know LinkedIn, that is something that's very important this day and age, but don't really know how to use the site. So we definitely can work together on those tactical things, those job search specific topics. But today we also want to explore, some of the more career development related topics. So things like, moving up within your organization or making a change or reentering the workforce. And part of that career development can also be graduate school. And some people don't realize that they can use their career coaching benefit in that way too. If they're preparing for grad school or in the process of applying to grad school, there's different things that we can work on together to help put your best foot forward from an application standpoint. So we'll go through general topics, and then we're also going to review specific cases and give you those specific examples that might better illustrate the points. Quickly, one question that we get a lot is, do you meet with alumni in person? And yes, I certainly do. I meet a lot of alumni in person, those who are in the Triangle, both in Chapel Hill and Raleigh and RTP. There's lots of different places to meet, but obviously there's a huge subset of alumni who are not in North Carolina or the Triangle area. So in those cases, I can work with you over the phone. I can work with you over Skype or Google Hangout, kind of whatever platform you're most comfortable with. Again, I like to meet people where they are. So just because you are in New York or DC or Atlanta or even Singapore, we can still use your hour benefit and accomplish the same things that we would in person. So let's start out with the job search topics. They are quite popular, so it probably would be helpful to run through things that come up in these sessions. So resumes obviously are very important. They're an important part of a job search. So we can talk through how to best position yourself on paper for the positions for which you're applying. Make sure that your resume is tailored to those positions. LinkedIn, everything from what do I need to have on my profile to how do I find positions or connections or employers or recruiters. Cover letters, in terms of making sure those are, again, tailored to a specific position. So in those cases, when I work with alums on cover letters, I ask that they send me both a draft and a specific link to a job description so that we can make sure the cover letter is geared towards that position and that employer. Interviews, like I mentioned, we do a lot of mock interviews, making sure you're prepared. Oftentimes troubleshooting if you've had a couple interviews and haven't landed a full-time offer, which is completely normal, but sometimes it's a good time after a couple interviews to check in and get some feedback on any tricky questions or how you're coming across in general. Job search strategy in terms of, I've been looking for a while and I'm not getting a lot of traction, or I'm just getting started, but I'm already employed. So how do I maximize my time and make sure, I'm accomplishing as much as I can in the shortest amount of time? And job search strategy oftentimes links in with networking, because that is an important part of any job search. It speeds up the process. And for those who are thinking about doing something different, whether that's moving to a new organization, changing function, changing industry, re-entering the workforce, and again, we'll talk through these things, networking is going to be hugely important. The importance of that goes up the further you're trying to get from where you are. Let's jump into some specific examples. We're going to start with a recent grad. As I mentioned, through the GAA, I work with everyone from recent grads to seasoned alums. The topics and the needs tend to be different, so we thought it would be helpful to give you some scenarios at different points in your career. For recent grads, for those of you who aren't aware, you actually get unlimited coaching for your first year, which is a huge benefit, because this is, as I tell all my recent grads, the hardest job you are ever going to have to find. It's the hardest job search of your life coming straight out of school, to take advantage of the benefit for sure. This particular alum had been out of school for 6 months. She had a degree in biology and was looking for positions in a lab. She'd been sending resumes out, was not getting any response, so initially came to me wanting help with her resume. So what I did is I had her send me a couple job descriptions, positions she was applying to or had already applied to and hadn't heard back. And when we got together, we sat down and we looked at the job description, and I looked at her resume, and the keywords weren't matching up. So I asked her to tell me more about her experience with good lab practices and assays and tissue extraction and all of these things. And she had that experience. It just wasn't translating on paper. Some of those experiences were through internships, and as is often the case with recent grads, some of those experiences were academic. So we talked about how to add academic work to the resume. We also talked about cover letters in that first hour. So we talked about, again, how to create a cover letter that reiterated and enhanced, provided more information about things that were on her resume, and expressed her desire to work for that organization. From there, we actually had a session where we sat down together with her computer, pulled up her LinkedIn profile, uploaded a picture, and added the content to her page. We talked through, what she needed to have there, and from there, kind of walked through how do I use this to apply to jobs and how do I follow up with contacts. And after that, in that session, we also talked about outreach. So the importance of putting herself out there, not just online, but to personal connections. So friends and family, professors for recent grads can be very helpful, and recruiters, following up to recruiters associated with different positions. That outreach eventually led to an interview for an on-campus position. It was a referral through a professor, so we did a mock interview to make sure she was prepared, and ultimately she ended up getting that job on campus. So again, this doesn't mean we have to sit down 20 times. We can be as efficient as we need to, but 4 or 5 sessions, and she had a job. So that was a really great experience. So here's another case study for an alum who has a couple more years of experience. This was a 2013 graduate who had a business degree, so graduated from Keenan Flagler. And upon graduation, she took a role with a retail management role, so a leadership development program with Belk. So a great program, pulls a lot of recent grads. She had a great experience there, but had gotten married and was starting to think about starting a family and wanted more traditional hours. Makes sense. Retail is 7 days a week, no matter how far up the food chain you are. So we kind of initially talked through options that leveraged her skill set. She had thought about sales, wasn't quite sure about that. We ended up identifying account management as an option, so still had that customer service aspect to it, still a sales aspect, but not the kind of hard sell. So we already have the client. How do we keep them happy? How do we potentially add to the suite of products that they're using? We talked briefly about working on updating her resume. I sent her a template. We talked through ways to improve and kind of gear her language towards these account management type of roles, and actually connected her to another alum at a local company who was in an account management role, so she could start to explore what that meant. This is something now that I've been with the GAA for a couple of years, I love to do, and I find that alums tend to be really open to it. So if I meet with someone who might benefit from a connection to another alum, I'm always happy to make that introduction if I can. And ultimately, this young lady ended up landing a new account management position with a local company here. It's a software company, but again, not a technical role. Helping manage customers and helping them kind of maximize their use of the platform.
And one of the things I'll just add, again, is that we have our Alumni Advising Network platform here, which Catherine knows about and recommends our alumni to all the time. And so even though Catherine is, again, learning our alumni and finding connections, we also have the ability for GAA members to research within our platform and to make their own connections and find other people who have already sort of self-identified to help alumni network. And the other piece, I'll tell people coming down the line, we hope to expand that even further. I will not say much more now until it's in the works, but I will say that we are very excited about a new software that we're looking at that we think will help our alumni really network and connect even further than what they're doing with our advising network.
Yes, and that's so exciting to hear. And the Advising Network is a fantastic resource. We will certainly bring that up later, but yes, I think it is one that people should take advantage of, and part of what we can talk about in a session is how do I leverage that network? How do I do that outreach? What's appropriate? All of those questions that people have when they're thinking about putting themselves out there. But I have to say, having worked at 3 local schools, UNC by far has the most engaged network, and it's been wonderful to see how those connections come together to help alumni kind of reach their goals. So moving along with someone with more experience, in this case, it's a 2009 graduate with a bachelor's degree in communications. They then went on to get a master's degree in sports management at another institution, and from there have moved into a ticket sales role with a large sports complex. They've been there a couple of years and really wanted to move into more of a strategic sales role with an opportunity for growth that just didn't exist where he was. So his initial outreach was around the resume. Again, he'd been sending things out, wasn't getting a lot of response. So we talked through how to upsell the experience he had that was most relevant. For example, he had implemented a CRM system within his organization, so customer relationship management system like Salesforce to help them track their sales and be more strategic about it. We worked to kind of highlight that and make that more of a highlight on his resume and downplay some of the more customer service cold calling type of experience. We made those tweaks, and I sent him a template, which I often do, a couple sample bullets based on our conversation to help him kind of build out his content from there, and he was able to move into a sales and marketing analyst role with a new company in the Charlotte area. And then finally, again, having been in alumni career services for quite some time now, I've worked with a lot of alumni with 15 or more years of experience. In this case, it was a 2001 grad who had a BA in history and political science. She had been working in the pharmaceutical industry in supply chain and operations, and had been with the same employer since graduation. And as is the case in pharma, oftentimes her company was purchased. It was a smaller organization that had gotten larger and larger. It was purchased, and the culture was changing, and she didn't feel like it was a place she wanted to be. So at this point, she was interviewing for a new position with a new company and reached out for a mock interview. And a lot of what we talked about was how to tell her story in terms of how she had progressed over the past 15 years and why this was the right time and why this was the right company, because we wanted to make it clear that this was a purposeful move on her part. It was one she was excited about. It was a company she saw herself growing with. And we wanted to articulate her ability to kind of learn and grow with that organization. So we did a mock interview. We talked about follow-up as well. And ultimately, a couple months later, she reached out and said she got that opportunity. So oftentimes these sessions really help people boost their confidence. And that's what I love about what I do. Oftentimes people come in and they're a little bit gun shy about how to articulate their experience, how to kind of sell themselves but still do it in a way that feels genuine and doesn't feel like they're bragging. So I'm so thrilled to be a part of that process of boosting people's confidence. When it comes to career development, oftentimes when alumni reach out, it's because they're wanting to take their career in a new direction. In this day and age, there are very few people who stay with an organization for 15 years, like the previous example. Oftentimes after 2 or 3 or maybe 5 years, they're looking to make a change. And some know what they want to do, whether it's move up within their organization or perhaps seek out a new role with a new organization. But oftentimes when they come to me, it's because they're unsure. There are things about their job that they like, but there are other things that they don't. Sometimes they're unsure if they're unhappy with their role or the organization. That often is the case. And so talking through, is it the job, is it the environment? And if this sounds like you, career coaching could be a really great option and something that we can work on together. So it's a chance for you to talk through some of these concerns and explore new opportunities. In these cases, I often talk with alumni about the things they enjoy in their job, the skills they've developed that they enjoy using. On the flip side, things that they find draining or tedious. We talk about what's important to them in a work environment. We talk about work-related values and drivers, etc., all these things. And then from there, start to try to map these to new positions. Other topics that come up quite a bit, asking for a raise or a promotion, negotiating a job offer. These are nerve-wracking conversations for a lot of people, especially women. We tend to be a little bit more reserved or nervous to bring these things up. So it really can be helpful to sit down with somebody and prepare for these conversations. And I also work a lot with women and men who are starting to think about re-entering the workforce after a career break, and increasingly alumni who are interested in starting their own endeavor or going down a more entrepreneurial path. So again, having someone as a sounding board, someone to help you outline next steps and to hold you accountable, or someone to help you come up with a plan to hold yourself accountable, can be really helpful as you move forward. So we'll dive into a few examples here as well. So sometimes, again, it's navigating your career within an organization. In this case, it was a 1995 grad who had a BA in psychology and a master's in instructional design from another institution. She had actually had a number of different careers. She had reinvented herself a couple of times, and currently had been in her role for 4 years in a marketing capacity. About 6 months ago, she saw a shift in her area of focus. So one particular project that had been ongoing came to an end, and her boss had come to her and asked her to take on this new responsibility. Initially, it was thought to be replacing this project that had gone away, but it quickly had become clear to her that it was going to be more work, quite a bit more work, and quite a bit more from a strategy standpoint, and working with leaders within the organization to really grow revenue. And so kind of knowing what she knew or knowing what she kind of came to know, she wanted to ask for a raise, and rightfully so. But it's nerve-wracking. It's nerve-wracking to have that conversation, especially when it's, this shift had already happened. So what we did was we spent an hour talking through her experience. We talked about how she had added value in the past. We talked about how she expected to add value in her new role. And we talked about how to position this to her boss and how to approach this conversation, in a way that made her value add clear, but also made it palatable for her boss, right? And so there's this kind of delicate balance of making it clear that you're happy in your role and with the organization, but also adding a lot of value and looking to really grow and take on new responsibility, and so wanting additional compensation for that. So we don't have the outcome of this one yet, but it was a recent conversation and one that I thought was pretty relevant, especially as we work in an environment where roles tend to change unexpectedly. And so having somebody to kind of validate your ideas and concerns and then talk through next steps can be quite helpful. Offer negotiations come up quite a bit. We get questions about this a lot. This is one particular example where I worked with an alum, 2009 undergrad from another institution, 2014 MBA from Keenan Flagler. He had been with his organization for a couple years, works in real estate, commercial real estate development, and was wanting to explore new opportunities, and was actually in the process of interviewing for a role with a new company. This was a role that had evolved through conversation, so there was no job posting per se, and that was part of his concern and part of what we talked through, because what he wanted to negotiate as he moved forward was the job title. There's a certain idea that he had in his head, personally and professionally, that he'd like to see. Salary in terms of hitting a certain point and moving up, from a salary standpoint, and then green card sponsorship. So in this case, this was someone who needed an employer to sponsor him to become a citizen. So obviously that was very important to him. And what we did was spend the hour talking through what was most important to him. We talked through the different pieces, what that job title meant personally and professionally in the short and long term, what salary to expect or push for, and then from a green card standpoint, how to position that with the employer. And we talked about, how to go into that negotiation and best practices. I recommended and tend to recommend that you put it all out there. Get the offer. Take some time to think about it, review it in detail, understand what it is you want to negotiate, and put those things out in order of importance to maintain that rapport and relationship. And in this case, that worked. He was able to get the new position. He got the salary he wanted. He got the green card sponsorship. And he had an understanding that they would reevaluate the title after a year when he'd come in and kind of taken on some additional responsibility. So overall, he was quite happy. And as such, I was quite happy when he reached out and let me know that he got that offer and was excited about the opportunity going forward. Reentering the workforce, again, a topic that comes up quite a bit, both with women and men who have taken a break from the paid workforce, whether that's to raise children, whether that is to care for a loved one, or a number of other reasons. It can be very overwhelming to start to think through the process of putting yourself out there, whether it's been a year, 2 years, 5 years, or in this case, many more years, 15 years. I met a couple years ago with a 1991 alum, degree in political science. She had worked at Duke Energy, kind of worked her way up for quite some time, was in a pretty high profile position when she left in 2001 to stay home with her children. And And she came to me kind of trying to understand and identify opportunities that would work for her going back into the workforce. She knew she wanted to go back to work. Her children had gotten to a point where they were pretty self-sufficient, middle school and high school. She knew she wanted to go back to work, but she wasn't 100% sure what types of roles that would align with her interests, her skills, and her schedule. I think a lot of people looking to come back into the workforce, many of the people I meet with are looking for part-time. And that can be tricky because those positions are not always posted. So she had already gotten to a point where she was starting to have some conversations. She had reached out to her immediate network, people that she used to work with, other moms that she knew through school activities that had gone back to work. Those people had asked for a resume, so kind of immediately we talked through updates to the resume. Again, I sent her a template, so she felt good about just the image. We talked about how to position things, what to put on, what to take off, those types of things. And then we talked about kind of taking that outreach beyond just her immediate contacts to UNC and her larger extended network. So those conversations ultimately led to a contract position within higher ed, something she had thought about previously, in an area that she wanted to explore. So it was kind of an ideal opportunity in that it gave her the opportunity to get back in that professional environment, and to stick her toe in the water and see if she liked it. So it was a 6-month contract, and it gave her that relevant kind of recent experience, and also kind of low pressure allowed her to determine if she liked being back in the workforce and if she liked higher ed. And then finally, in this category, entrepreneurship. This is something that's coming up more and more. I think it's quite interesting. I think it makes sense given our economy, and given kind of the uptick in entrepreneurial efforts. So in this case, it was a 2003 political science alumna. She works in marketing, has a full-time position in marketing, but is interested in going out on her own in order to create more flexibility in her schedule personally and professionally. I think this is oftentimes what pushes people in that direction, is that they want to work, they like what they do, they like being in a professional environment, but the environment they're in is not as flexible as they would like it to be. So in this case, the alum had started to kind of do some side work for friends of friends, worked on websites, did some design work. And so we talked through, what she had, the skills that she had, what she enjoyed most, and where that aligned with the market needs as she understood it. And from there, we talked about, next steps and things she could do in the short term to position herself in a point where she could leave the organization. Part of this, and this is true in any job search, as I said, the networking aspect is so important, but part of this for her was thinking through how to identify and leverage her network, both to explore the process of going out on her own, but also to explore creating a community, because oftentimes we need that support to be successful in the short and long term. So this was a really fun hour. It was energizing for her. It was exciting for me because I love to see alumni pursue their passion. And it left her with some concrete next steps in terms of pursuing this goal. And sometimes that goal or that next step is graduate school. And so you can also use your coaching benefit in that area as well. So most of the time when alumni use our session, they do so after they've chosen a particular program and want to make sure they're presenting the best application possible. In the last couple of years at UNC, I have worked with alumni applying to law school, PA school, medical school, nursing school, physical therapy school, social work programs, MBA programs, and everything in between. So no matter what your background and no matter what you're choosing to pursue, you can definitely use your coaching session to start to work towards those goals. So the first case study I want to share is of an alum who is applying to PA school. She's a 2014 grad. She had 3 PA school interviews last year and wanted to prepare for her interviews this year. So we reviewed feedback from schools the past year. We practiced introducing herself and explaining her past education and experience. For her, this was particularly important because she has an art history degree, and that's not a traditional degree for somebody who's going into the medical field. So we really had to talk through how to position that and how that would add value in the program. We talked through difficult questions that come up, things she struggled with the year before, and talked through how to continue to practice on her own. And I was so thrilled to get an email from her just a few weeks ago to say that she was admitted to PA school this year and will start in the fall. And finally, on the application side, this would be an example of how we'd work on kind of more of that preparation for presenting yourself. So in this case, it was someone applying to Keenan Flagler's EMBA program, so Executive MBA. When he came to me, he had his resume and he had a draft of his essays, which is typically a good way to go about it. So he sent me the link to everything that was required, and he sent me a draft of his personal statement and his essays. And so we were able to sit down. I was able to review those things in advance, and I was able to give him direct feedback as to what he was doing well and where I would like to see edits and improvements. So he was able to make those edits. He sent them back for a high-level review of the final materials, and he was admitted to the program and has already started. So oftentimes people have a sense of what they want to get across. It's just they're unsure of whether their message is coming across the way they want it to, and so it's good to get that outside feedback. So hopefully these examples have been helpful in terms of better understanding how you could use a career coaching session. Again, it is not just tactical. It's everything from preparing a resume to what do I want to do with my life. And so I really, really enjoy working with UNC alums, and I hope to have the chance to work with more of you in the future. So if you are interested in scheduling, that goes through Marcy. Her email is here. And Marcy, do you have anything to add?
The only thing I would add is I know potentially some people watching this video are not General Alumni Association members. And so the thing I always say is there are lots of great reasons to join the GAA. But if you are even remotely considering about considering taking advantage of career coaching, it by far pays for itself immediately. Our annual memberships are $50 a year, and Catherine's rates, because she is so amazing, are not $50 a year. So just know that just your membership pays for itself. In addition, you get the great access to all of the webinars that are recorded that we do with Catherine, and also the Alumni Advising Network. So I always say there are 1,001 great reasons to be a GAA member, but if you are thinking about professional development and career coaching and resume support or any other thing, your membership immediately pays for itself within that first hour. So that would be my only, push. I'm not a hard sales person. I just tell people all the time I do things that make sense, and that definitely makes sense if you are thinking about career services.
Perfect. That's a great point. Thank you so much, Marcy, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to do this. I hope this helps people if they're thinking about coaching, kind of hone in on how to use this session. And again, I look forward to working with more alums in the coming months.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Catherine, and thank you again to all of those who are GAA members and those who I'm sure will be joining soon. Have a great day.